This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
What's good, folks? Welcome to another edition of the Cover One Film Room, the show that gives you the hows and the whys behind both the good and the bad of the Buffalo Bills, powered, of course, by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. I'm one of your two hosts, Anthony Prohaska, joined as always by Eric Turner. And Eric, more positivity.
Yes.
Bills are in the midst of a winning streak, so we have another more positive than negative film room to get into. There were some negatives that happened in this game.
Definitely.
You broke down several of them in your video on Monday, talking about the Bills' run game, which shouldn't be too surprising for folks, given how things have trended in the past against the Dolphins. But nonetheless, here the Bills sit. Another victory against the Miami Dolphins, a sweep this year in the regular season, which is very nice. We get another victory. It's another victory week and on to the Indianapolis Colts. But before we can get on to the Colts, we got to put a bow on this game, which is exciting. So are you excited for that? Are you excited for life? Are you excited for fall? How are you feeling right now?
Man, we have a full episode. As you said, we're going to get into some of the personnel groupings that the Bills are using as of late with multiple tight ends. We're going to get into the defense and how they struggled yet expected to struggle and almost stuck to their game plan when it came to the run game of the Dolphins to limit the explosive pass plays, obviously of Hill and Waddle. We're going to get into some of that. We're going to actually break down what a coach means when they're talking about, hey, they need to stick to their keys and fundamentals, and how that was kind of the biggest issue when we're talking the run defense against the Dolphins. But before all that happens, we had some breaking news today. Why don't you fill everyone in on that?
Yes, the Buffalo Bills welcomed back into the fold team legends and Wall of Fame candidates Quentin Jefferson and Jordan Phillips into the fold, into the fray. The defensive line needing some reinforcements at this point overall, but especially with the news of Dwan Smoot heading to IR. Dwayne Carter was put on IR last week. They've been kind of battling really the injury bug at that spot as a whole this year with, Ed Oliver being banged up earlier, still kind of fighting through some stuff. So in effort to kind of strengthen that position, reinforce it a little bit as much as they could this year at this point, given where we are in the season. Yeah, the Bills welcome back Quentin Jefferson and Jordan Phillips. How is as we both kind of snicker and smirk? How you feeling about it?
I mean, it doesn't really move the needle. It's kind of par for the course for this time of year. Teams start to run on the Bills a little bit and, get some success versus the Bills defense. It seems every year. Then Bean goes out and signs someone that's been on the team before. Signing Jefferson, I think Jefferson versus Phillips, I think Jefferson maybe moves the needle a little bit more when we're talking the play on the field. But I think it's just interesting because, the Bills get run on pretty well by the Dolphins, again, as expected because of the defensive structure and philosophy.
Yes.
And everyone's like, we need to get bigger at D tackle. We need to get a run stuffing D tackle. And Bean says, no, we're not making a trade. In fact, we're bringing it back two guys that are going to help versus the pass.
Yeah.
And that presser today from McDermott I thought was interesting and it really kind of sums it up perfectly. And essentially he said, we're a rush 4 defense. Everything starts with rushing 4. And obviously they're more geared towards the rushing the passer and rushing the quarterback. And so I think these two moves make sense. I think obviously given their cap situation, given the situation with, their draft picks and not wanting to give too many of those away and still, worrying long term, I think these moves make sense when we're talking about rushing the passer because the Bills rushing the passer are pretty average overall for the season. They are ranked 23rd in team pressure percentage, of course, just rushing 4, and we're not talking blitzing at all. So it makes sense to go get a guy like Jefferson and Phillips. Who knows what their role will be, but the fact that they went and got 2 of these type of guys that are more than likely going to help more of, in the pass rush game versus the run D game, it kind of makes sense given, again, the injury to Smoot, right? Because I think Jefferson at the very least could help in that department when we're talking Smoot being bumped inside to D tackle at times on those obvious pass rush downs.
Yeah, and you that makes sense. And you spoke to the pressure rate with 4, and just chime in for folks in case they don't know, the Bills have the second lowest blitz rate on the year at 17.3%, and then ranked 23rd in terms of pressure rate, like you mentioned, also 21st in sack rate overall at this point at 6.2%. So a bit lackluster up front. And, we've talked about it in the show, and I feel like I've been commenting the same thing to people in reference to Ilianku, who I really like, and I think he's flashed in a bunch of ways. But he's offers very little in terms of pass rush pop. And so what he does is a very niche role. And he's honestly done it well. Like his ability to hold the ground versus the run and anchor there and fight off double teams, sometimes triple teams. He plays with power on the inside. But based on the structure of the defense, you really do need every defensive lineman to have more pass rush pop and have that kind of versatility. Even someone like Austin Johnson, who slimmed down when here versus what he'd been previously. You need to have that kind of versatility to be able to affect the run, but also affect the pass. Anku doesn't really offer too much of that. And then you get guys like Phillips, who, when he does flash, it's usually against the pass and in tremendous fashion, whether it's the Bills or for other teams. And then Quentin Jefferson, like you said, kind of also leaning more towards that skill set or that type of role. It's all one giant interconnected piece when it comes to their structure and what they're willing to allow versus the run versus how they attack it and the balance that it strikes and how that ties in the pass and so on and so forth. And I think for a lot of folks, it's just, I think they hope to get something more at the trade deadline at that spot, especially given some of the other moves that were made by other teams, even though technically I feel like Amari Cooper could count as that trade deadline move.
Sure, of course.
And especially given some of the underwhelming pieces with the defensive line. And then, like you said, coming on the heels of getting run on by Miami. So I sense the frustration for people. I'm more just, kind of like we talked about offline and then you alluded to here. I think it's just more just guys to try and fill this out and trying to get some bodies in there. I don't think either one of these guys moved the needle. I'm not sitting there going like, wow, like prayers have been answered for this season. It's similar to that Linval Joseph move last year where we were like, okay, and then just kind of went from there.
And of course, having been in the scheme, the learning curve is obviously really quick for these guys. When you're talking, again, the role player of Jefferson, maybe sliding into that smoot role, but also Dwayne Carter's obviously still out. And so, Phillips and Jefferson can slide right in. There's no learning curve. There's no, hey, having to transition to this defense. They know the defense. We'll see how, Phillips against the run, he was god awful in Dallas. Again, I would say he was kind of out of role when it came to what they were asking him to do. He's not a two-gapper. No. You know what I mean? And so I think what they can do now is, because I don't like that second wave. We talked about it the last couple weeks. I don't like that second wave of D tackles when you have basically Austin Johnson playing 3 technique and primarily for most of his career, he's been kind of that nose tackle in that Daquan Jones type role. So maybe now they can kind of shift him over just a little bit. I think Eli, we're going to talk about him tonight. I think he's right now one-dimensional, and so I think that does limit him because they got to have a pass rush presence in that second wave. And so I think maybe they can bump Johnson inside a little more to nose tackle, and then now they can kind of intertwine Jefferson and Phillips and some of those 3 tech reps and those obvious pass rush downs, because I think that's where you're going to get your most bang for your buck or value for guys that obviously were just released from their teams, and that's saying a lot this time of the year.
Yeah, especially like the teams that they're coming from, Dallas kind of in the midst of some struggles, Cleveland in the midst of some struggles. So you're thinking these teams are really trying to batten down the hatches for anyone that's providing value. And so for them to be cut loose, a bit disconcerting for them. Yeah, and I'm interested to see where they fit in, what the rotation looks like. Anku has one more practice squad call up. Like, what does that look like? Is he the odd man out? What does the timeline look like for Jefferson and Phillips? And then how does Austin Johnson tie in? How does Dwayne Carter tie in when he comes back? I'm interested to kind of see how things start to shake out going forward, given kind of the whole muddiness of that position group and how that ties into their scheme and structure. Tying that into the conversation of scheme and structure and how the Bills game played out against Miami this past week. Again, another victory for the Buffalo Bills, who can complete the sweep of the Dolphins this year, which is very nice, and stay undefeated. No jinx in the AFC East this year. Another victory, a bit close, helped out by a penalty from Jordan Poyer late in the game. So shout out to Poe for still looking out for the Bills.
Still love
nice
you.
Job. Yeah, appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Jordan Poyer. But a good game, one that Miami needed this one if they wanted to kind of right the ship a little bit, which is still possible, right? Tua comes back last week or 2 weeks ago against the Cardinals. You lose a close one. This week, in division game, you're at Buffalo. It's the second time you're facing them. It's Tua's second week back. You really want to start, if you're going to start to build with some momentum, even though apparently it's not a real thing, you would think that is the week that Miami's trying to really do it,
Yeah.
right? You would have liked to have beaten Arizona at home, but you lose, beat the defending champs, your rival at their place, Tua's second game, start to kind of move some things in a positive direction. This was a big game for the Dolphins, even really a big one for the Bills as the schedule starts to swing up again in the next couple of weeks with the Chiefs and Lions, and not necessarily in this order, but Chiefs and Lions and Niners and Rams and all those teams. So a decently big game for the Bills, but a really big, important one for the Dolphins, who brought it this week. And I think the in division games are already tough anyway, but this game really reflected that, I think, on both sides of the ball for each team.
Yeah, they got the Dolphins' best punch. I mean, there were so many different concepts, especially for talking run, because they knew that's how they wanted to attack the Bills' defense. McDaniels always does it that way. And so they got the best punches from McDaniels and that staff, and they tried staying ahead of the Bills' defensive staff when it came to some of those run concepts. And we're going to show you some of those things in the film room. But overall, both sides of the ball, I think the Bills, regardless of how the game was unfolding, they kind of just stuck to their initial plan and strategy. On the defensive side, of course, they want to limit the explosives. They want to limit and minimize Hill and Waddle. I think for the most part, they did a good job of doing that. But when you do that, when you're playing a lot of those two high structures and you're playing over the top and you have an injury to Christian Benford, you're arguably your best corner, you're going to do some things different game plan wise. And so they said, you know what? We're going to let them run the ball. They're going to run the ball. They're going to use motion. They're going to use shifting. They're going to use 21 personnel to get to those runs, and they're going to rip off a few. And they did. And I think the Bills just, stuck to the script and, took those punches. And I think the offense getting going in the second half, of course, that works in the Bills' favor when we're talking defensive philosophy, because now, they're able to play their game on defense. And so on the other side of the ball, I just love what they're doing with Josh and the offense, being able to run the ball, getting in those short throws. I'll let you talk about the short throws. This was almost legendary and historical when it came to Josh Allen and how the Dolphins were making him dink and dunk his way down the field. But overall, just the philosophy that Brady has enacted on offense has slowed Josh Allen down. Has slowed this offense down at times, taking that pressure off of him, as we've talked about, and he's protecting the ball and not relying on the hero stuff. And he's just taking what's there. I know you did a breakdown on that, and I totally agree, man. I think he took the profit, as we always talk about, and what you said in videos before. And I think that's going a long way for Josh Allen, the quarterback. And he's doing stuff that we have not seen. He's shown restraint and he's shown the patience that we have not seen thus far in his career.
And that's been such a big thing. It was, not to keep bringing him up, but it was a thing we talked about with Dorsey. Like, Allen wants blood, Dorsey wants blood. So you had two dudes that were both like, yeah, like, let's get it. And so neither really kind of reined in the other at times. And seeing Allen operate in that way, to stick on that side of the ball was really nice. 71.8% of his passes versus the Dolphins came at 9 yards or less. 18 of those were between 0 to 9 yards. 10 were behind the line of scrimmage. He was, beautiful. There's that passing chart from Next Gen to really put that into perspective. He was 10 of 10 behind the line of scrimmage for 121 of his 235 passing yards. He was 12 of 18 on passes from 0 to 9 yards for 77 yards. And then tying in, some of the players, especially Khalil Shakir, who were helping him out, the Bills had 192 yards after catch in week 9. That was the most in week 9, ahead of the Dolphins, who are second at 161. This chart, I think, is a really great representation of what Allen did, just living in that, high underneath to low underneath, everything 10 and below, taking what the Dolphins gave him, whether it was, on some chip releases, whether it was on play action and some checkdowns, whether it was on Brady scheming some stuff up. They found themselves consistently in some third and shorts they were able to capitalize on. And then tying that into Josh, like you said, how he was playing with some restraint. There were multiple times where it's 2nd and 10 and he's hitting, the stick route or the little into Kincaid or someone, and you're getting 5 yards, you're getting 6 yards, you're getting 7, and being able to live in 3rd and 3s and take what Miami was giving regularly in that pass game with those voids in that space underneath. It was a really nice approach from him to kind of see that mode of attack and how Brady tied it in with the run game and the pass game, giving Josh some answers. Really encouraging kind of to see that performance. And then on the defensive side too, to kind of echo your point, Miami's run game has usually been good against the Bills. I think people forget that. They ran all over the Bills on that Saturday night game in the snow a couple years ago. They ran really well against the Bills in week 2 this year, but then the game script threw that out of whack. McDaniel, for as much as it's Tua and Hill and Waddle in the pass game, he's a really good run game architect with how he designs stuff and make things really tricky and is able to get to multiple concepts from different alignments and personnel. How Alec Ingold folds into that in terms of how they use him. And then, like you said, motion and leverage and angles, all of that good stuff. So good game plan from Miami, really on, that offensive side of the ball with the run game. And then the Bills being able to combat that in the second half and then work things offensively. Very nice for them. And tying into that, I want to pull up this graphic from our friends over at BetUS. This graphic is showing where the AFC stands as we got out of week 9 and head into week 10. And you can see, no jinx, Bills are sitting pretty a little bit in that AFC East with how the rest of the division is shaken out. But Eric, this also kind of puts into perspective what the AFC North is looking like, the AFC West and the AFC South. And now we're starting to get into those double-digit weeks this week with week 10. Now we can start getting into more of those realistic conversations potentially of playoff seeding, who's the 1, who's the 2, how the wild card race is shaken out a little bit. When you look at this graphic, and it could be the Bills for you, which is fine, what stands out the most to you here? Is it that AFC East and how the Bills have kind of built this lead a little bit? Is it the muddiness of the AFC North with the Steelers? What sticks out to you when you kind of look at this and start to think going forward about the playoff picture?
2 things. First, starting with the Bills, that lead is great, first of all. Second of all, I like that from the perspective of, hey, the Bills have some injuries. And so I don't think they have to rush some of these guys back. I think they can slow play it when it comes to injuries. Just because, again, the main thing is to win your division first. And so I think that's huge. And then secondly, the team that stands out, like Pittsburgh, I'm pretty impressed that they're 6-2, given everything that's happened, with their quarterback situation, and they're just quietly stacking wins and giving Baltimore a run for their money. When you look at Baltimore, they could arguably be the top team in the NFL, and Pittsburgh's right there with them in the AFC North.
Yeah, and they tried to strengthen their team yesterday. They traded for Mike Williams from the Jets, traded for Preston Smith from the Packers, so kind of strengthen that already strong defensive grouping. I mean, year in and year out, you've automatically got 2 Defensive Player of the Year candidates in TJ Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick, and what they just have gotten from that defense. Schedule has helped them a little bit, but I like what they've done defensively and just how they continue to live in single high and beat teams up and how fun their front is. That's where my focus is really in that division as a whole. The battle between Pittsburgh and Baltimore and then Cincinnati. They're a well-coached team. Some of the dudes there, they're 4-5. They play Baltimore on Thursday night this week. Are they able to eke out a win and get to 500? Do they claw their way back and kind of get into the wild card picture? What do we start to see from that? Cincinnati, it just feels like year in and year out tends to find a way to be problematic or troublesome. Even, when Burrow went down, Browning was giving them quality reps and they were making a push for the playoffs. How that AFC North has just turned into a dogfight. How many teams from there go to the playoffs given the muddiness of the AFC West a little bit? What are the Colts kind of doing? It really feels like the North and the West are kind of pull those wild card teams and round out the playoff picture, I should say, which is really fun to kind of look at this and gain that perspective. Provided again in this graphic by our friends at BetUS, who, if you are looking for a new sports book this football season, BetUS is your answer. They give the fastest payouts in the industry. They give a 150% bonus on your first deposit and then 125% bonus on your next 2 deposits up to $2,000. All of that with code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. They have a fast and easy deposit and withdrawal process, 24/7 personalized service, 365 days a year, live wagering on all major games, the best betting variety in the business. They allow you to get 10% back on your net losses twice a year, and they also offer you your very own personal account manager as you go through and bet with them. So check out BetUS for all of your sports book betting needs. And thank you to them for this graphic and their partnership and their sponsorship. Eric, start to pivot now to setting the table for the film in the film room. Let's talk about this Bills offense and kind of how they attack the Dolphins. We alluded to it a bit with the Josh Allen chart that we showed and some of the overall thoughts and philosophical stuff, but let's start to get into the meat and potatoes of it and talk about how this offense attacked the Dolphins defense in week 9.
Yeah, they used a lot of multiple tight ends, right? I mean, they opened the game in 13 personnel,
Hmm.
one running back, three tight ends. They used 12 personnel a bunch in this game. Overall, this season, they've used 12 personnel, and this is where this conversation is going to start. One running back, two tight ends, 18.8% of the time. That's 20th overall. Against the Dolphins, that was up to 20.3%. So that was only 15th for the week. So it's pretty average. But if you look at how balanced they have been out of this personnel grouping, you can see that on the season, their numbers are pretty good. First in EPA per dropback at 0.6, third in, versus 4, so no blitzers, and in passing, fifth in EPA per dropback in when we're talking, I'm sorry, second in rush 5 EPA per dropback, which is second overall, and third in success rate when we're talking passing out of 12 personnel. Rushing, this is where I think this staff has done a great job in the offseason, and props to Coleman, because in rush EPA out of 12, they're fourth overall. Yards for designed rushes, they're second overall. 5 yards a carry on designed rushes out of 12 personnel. Yards before contact per rush, they're third, and explosive percentage, they're first. And I say that because last year, when the Bills were in 12 personnel, they only averaged 3.8 yards per rush when they were in 12 personnel. So you can see there's a really good improvement, this year when they're up to 5.4 overall out of 12 personnel. I think that's the balance that this Bills offense needed. And I think that the staff did a great job. And we're going to show you the concept that they love. We've broken it down many times in the film room with that mid zone run and those zone runs. But they did not shy away from running and spamming 12 and 13 personnel, whether it was a pass or a run against the Dolphins.
And I loved that as the just general week in and week out, given how the Bills offense is designed from a personnel standpoint and structure standpoint, but especially with how the Dolphins were coming into this game, banged up front, no Sealer, no Phillips, no Chubb, like the ability to kind of attack them and just regularly creating displacement out of 12 and 13, and even just the run game in general, moving bodies horizontally, vertically. We saw them really gouge the Dolphins for as much as like the Dolphins run game versus the Bills defense was the talk. The Bills run game was just as successful, if not more so, from a metric standpoint and a success standpoint against them. And even from on the tape as well, it set the table, added to those easy buttons for Josh Allen, because he can just turn around and hand the ball off.
Right.
And we start with this first one out of 12 personnel to really kind of give you folks that perspective of how it sets up, what it does, one of their favorite concepts that they love to run out of it that we're going to dive into now, and just the benefits that it affords this Bills offense.
Yeah, and it starts with the personnel. Obviously, 12 personnel, and you get the wide zone run to the weak side. You get that, that displacement between Torrance, Brown, and even the tight ends. But more importantly, I want you to pay attention to how the Dolphins were matching up against 12 personnel. Knox, Kincaid on the field with Ray Davis. They put their base defense out there. So 3 linebackers, but that third linebacker in this set early in the game, first quarter, 119, is Duke Riley. That's the third linebacker. I want you to pay attention to that as we move on in this breakdown. So he's on the field, and they got more of a too high look now that they're not super deep, but you can see, well, if you're going to do that, we're just going to run this weak zone run several times. They spammed it. But what I liked, Anthony, is not just the call here and the displacement, especially with Ray Davis and his physical running style, but how they sequenced it. So you saw that play end of the first quarter. On the very next play, they did something very similar. This time it's 12 personnel, but they added Anderson as the extra offensive lineman. And the Bills, when they add in that extra offensive lineman, a lot of times it's to pass protect, and this was no different. They use Kincaid in motion here, like a quasi wide receiver. And this is a shot call. And honestly, Josh, if he wanted to, he probably could have had Coleman down the seam.
Yeah.
I'm sure Ramsey kind of scared him away. And especially with this cover 3 type look, I'm sure he expected Ramsey to be getting to the deep third, but Ramsey hangs low versus Kincaid. And you'll see Josh has Coleman. I think that is right down the seam near the 50. I think Josh could have hit him, but he doesn't, again, he doesn't risk anything. And he hits Davis here, but I do think he could have hit Coleman, especially when you're talking about where this post safety is to the top of the screen. But either way, he checked it down, and Davis was able to pick up that play. I love this sequencing, especially when you talk about, running that wide zone run or that mid zone run, and then the very next play running the same look, but then a shot call and the check down.
Especially with adding the jet motion to it, which we've talked about a ton. Granted, it's different in presentation and personnel this week than it was last week. But, we talked about it a ton. You did the video on it. Like, they love those 3x1 sets. They used Jalen Virgil on it last week. You bring somebody in jet motion across, and then you run that, mid zone to the weak side. Different presentation and look here, but it's still in essence a 3x1. You jet motion Kincaid across, and now it's play action. So I'm right there with you. I like the sequencing of that. This threw me for such a loop because it's single high pre-snap and it stays single high post-snap. So the seam is there pre and post. It's very viable. And it threw me to the point that I was like, is there something I'm not getting? And it's just supposed to be a clear out. And then I was like, no, this is an actual piece. He can hit it. You see Keon throw his hand up at the 46, and then he's looking. And also look at the bottom of the screen there as you let it go on the sideline. Rasul Douglas is pointing to the shot, and then there's another guy to the right of Douglas, and then there's two more guys towards the bottom left of the screen. Yeah, all pointing to the shot and thinking that it's Josh Allen. You're thinking like, boom, there goes the shot. And this is really there. Nobody goes in that deep third. That post safety stays shaded to the other side of the field. That shot call really is there. And it was so open, again, that it made me like, I was staring at it for like 5 minutes being like, is there something I'm not getting? And maybe it's not real. But I like your point of Ramsey or somebody kind of throwing him off that a little bit. Or maybe it's just Allen saying, you know what, it's 2nd and 2. Let me just check it down and get the first and keep us on schedule here. But they did have an opportunity for that shot there, and I would have liked to see it there. Yeah. And also, nice indication there from Poyer and Jordan Brooks with their signal pre-snap as the motion comes.
And I talked about Duke Riley being in as the base linebacker defender in the last play. Well, with the extra offensive lineman, look what the Dolphins do. They bring in Tyus Bowser, and he's more of an edge presence. He's more of a Sam linebacker. He's not a cover guy. And I highlighted Brooks and Poyer here because as that motion happens, to me, this is the universal signal for Sky. Cover 3 Sky. Well, guess who the safety is here? That'd be Jordan Poyer. So I do think it is cover 3 or some variation thanks to this motion and that signal. That's usually the universal sign for cover 3 Sky. But again, the personnel, I think, is a major thing here because now you got, again, this is a run look with 2 tight ends and then the offensive lineman, extra offensive lineman. You got a 5-man surface. You have 2 backers right near the line of scrimmage. Now, obviously, Poyer's down here. So they're stacking the box in and around the line of scrimmage. And that's why I love this call. And Josh, this is likely a touchdown. He can layer this throw up and over Brooks down the seam to Coleman.
There's so much space for Coleman. There's no one around him.
Why he rushed it, maybe felt a little pressure, but I mean, Davis was open, and I'll give credit to Josh here. I like the placement inside, spinning him around, and he's able to get some yards after the catch. I just love that sequencing when you're talking this mid-zone run. It's something they did a bunch. Here's another play in that same family with a 13-yard gain. Once again, base defense from the Dolphins. There's the backside displacement. This type of run is meant to cut it back, and you're cutting it back into the strength. You got the 2 tight ends. You got some really good blockers and combinations happening on the backside of that, and you're able to get 13 yards. And you see it from this perspective as well. Once again, they got, Bowser in here as that Sam linebacker to the strength of the formation with the tight ends. This is one of their bread and butter plays. I think that for this season alone, mid-zone has been their prime bread and butter play, as opposed to last year it was dart. I think going under center and running this play from under center has really been their go-to run all season.
That's literally in my notes right now. It's that weak side mid zone is the new tackle pull. And that's been the concept they've spammed the most. It's the one they've used to layer and build. And great call again. We get that 5-man surface. Weak side mid zone is really nice to run in general, but especially like out of these looks with more bodies attached to the formation, you're probably going to get that one tech to that weak side. Makes it easier on that double team between the center and guard of picking him, climbing up to that will. And then Eric just highlighted, what do we have? A 2 high safety structure for the Dolphins there. So they're going to have to fit that from depth. And Cook cuts this back, hits that backside C gap, as a lot of these runs did for them in this game. And part of that too is, the offensive line blocking. The tight ends did a good job. I shouldn't say all tight ends. Dawson Knox did a pretty good job blocking in this game like he did last week. He's shown a lot of, chromerism techniques, really, cross chopping those arms down, turning, sealing, pivoting, being able to do a lot of things in the run game. I know he hasn't been the receiver that a lot of fans want him to be, but he's been an asset as a run blocker this year.
No doubt. And we've seen it week in and week out. Here's a third quarter run, a 17-yard game by Ty Johnson. Once again, 12 personnel, but more of a balanced set, a 2x2 set. Kincaid on one side, Knox on the other. But this is a 17-yard gain. It's a very, very decisive cut because of the penetration up the middle on McGovern by the Dolphins defender. And these are the type of runs, these zone runs, this mid-zone run, and really zone runs in general. The blocking of the offensive line is really what makes the decision for a running back. And this one, there was penetration. So again, Ty had to cut it back here. But this is a really nice decision by him and cutting it back all the way against the grain. And honestly, again, this is the third quarter. The Bills ran this play several times. And we're going to show you, yes, they would go under center and run this, but we're going to show you here in a minute why that is important. Because once again, personnel is everything.
Yes.
They have Bowser in on this play as well as a Sam linebacker on the line of scrimmage. And that's going to become very important when we're talking the Bills using 12 personnel on the very next play to score 6 points.
Yeah, absolutely. Not too much for me on this one. I think you had everything. I always like to describe zone runs as a choose your own adventure for the running back, and describing it as, you just you have to be like water, you flow. And like you said, however the O-line blocks it, that dictates what happens. That's also part of the benefit of that zone run piece where, if somebody blows somebody up or gets across someone's face, there's still other options for you to find a way to succeed. It's not just, well, here, this run is going into this gap. Uh-oh, that gap is blown up. What are we going to do now? And then again, another backside cut, and a good job by Dawson Knox washing his man out. So that way Johnson could cut all the way back and outside the formation.
And so now we fast forward. That was at the 10-minute mark of the third quarter. Now we're at the 2-minute 17 mark. 2nd and 3 situation. I like this call. This is Ray Davis's touchdown, but passing on 2nd and short, it's a free play essentially, and they run their mesh rail. That's Davis up the sideline here. But once again, personnel decides everything, right? So the Bills are in 12 personnel. And what do the Dolphins do? They have their 5-man surface right here. They have their 2 linebackers. All right. Here's Bowser as the end man on the line of scrimmage. And so watch how, as the ball snapped, Josh is finding that rail route. So now he's looking to the bottom of the screen. He sees Ramsey and Walker running like it's man coverage. They're going to take Hollins. They're going to take Knox across the middle. So that gives Josh possibly a numbers advantage or space advantage out wide. Who's covering Davis? Is it going to be a linebacker from the middle of the field? Or are you getting a dog technique where this edge guy is peeling off? Well, Bowser rushes. He's primarily an edge guy. He's not really good in space. That means Josh has an easy pitch and catch to Davis, and then Davis does the rest by scampering for a 63-yard gain and touchdown so 6 points, 12 personnel. Matchups are everything. Personnel is everything. Big play for the Bills.
Yeah, you're hitting that out of that personnel grouping. Miami's trying to match it, and now you have that personnel, 12 personnel flexibility and advantage we talked about all throughout the offseason. This is what it affords you. If you can run out of that personnel grouping, then you force the defense to try to match with bigger bodies or heavier bodies. And now when you pass, you have the opportunity either from an individual matchup standpoint to have an advantage or potentially a schematic one here. And Miami just blows this completely. The rail is the first read in the progression here, and no one covers Davis, like you said. So this is easy pitch and catch for Josh Allen. There's no, exactly to your point, like, is someone supposed to peel off? Should there have been a push call and Walker needs to take
maybe
Davis? And then Brooks should be picking up Knox.
I don't know.
Because also look at like what got me with this too. Brooks here, he doesn't really even acknowledge what's going on. He stays there as that low hole player. And even as the ball comes out, he looks back towards the mesh in front of him right there. And doesn't even vacate right away to try and go pick up Ray Davis. So poor adjustment, poor execution from Miami, but also tying into them trying to match personnel with the Bills based off of the run success earlier that we just showed. And now you're able to pass out of it and just making life easy for Allen, being able to hit that primary read right off his drop. And Ray Davis, like you said, great job from him. Like just making the safety look foolish. There's not even a crazy hard cut here. Like he just gets upfield and sees the angle and is like, okay, I'm just going to turn inside. It's just so simple.
Yeah, he's been great in the run and pass game. He's very reliable in both areas. And we talked about the contrast between him, James Cook. James Cook has a drop in this game on a play. He out leveraged a linebacker. And you throw Ray Davis in there, and he doesn't have that issue. He's able to catch these passes, these easy passes. and turn them into points. So it's been interesting watching those two guys kind of, duel it out for touches. But very good, quick read on a concept that the Bills have used and kind of worn out and spammed, over the last, 8 or 9 weeks. And so easy money for them when you're talking that. And just the personnel it's obviously huge when it comes to these things. And so the other personnel grouping that we talked about is 13 personnel. And, it's something that the Bills haven't used too much of it, as of late. I think overall they've used it 1.7% of the time. All right. So that's 19th overall. In this game, that was up over 10%, 10.2%. That was third for the week.
Huge jump.
And so the Bills obviously had made a concerted effort because of injuries, I'm sure, with Amari Cooper. But again, also some of the injuries, like you said, on the defensive side of ball for the Dolphins. And I loved how Brady set up a play to Coleman, 21-yard gain, with this simple run early in the game. So let's take a look at this 13 personnel. So 1 running back, 3 tight ends, and they're just running. What do you know? The same play we just talked about, right? First play of the game, they actually ran it twice just from 2 different personnel packages. They run this, the mid zone, and just look at how those linebackers are firing downhill. They know it. This is their bread and butter. This is the Bills' bread and butter. We talked about it. These guys are firing downhill, and I love how the Dolphins even put Calais Campbell as the to the strength of the formation right here, because they know that's usually where it's going to cut back to. They put him there, and he made some awesome plays. But just look at how everything is coming downhill. They're firing on it. They do a great job. Jordan Brooks right in that A gap of forcing that cutback and really minimizing this to only a 4-yard gain.
Yeah, the good fit from Miami and kind of minimizing that. Brooks shoots and forces that cutback from Cook right into the rest of the support from the defense. My secret trade deadline wish, even though I knew it wasn't going to happen because it was in division, was Calais Campbell. Just him doing this at like almost 40 years old. He had, like you said, he had a bunch of flashes in this game, especially against the run. Nice to see. But you start with this, you get that 4-yard gain, which is still positive, right? So now you're in a 2nd and 6. But then, like you said, what this leads to later, what this sets up later, you're seeing how the Dolphins are triggering on this. And we've seen this from teams. We saw it in week 1 with the Cardinals. When teams start to key in on it, they trigger fast, whether it's the 2nd level or the 3rd level, and stopping it. Once you see that, kind of make a note, put it in your back pocket, and then try to get at that later, maybe in a pass like we see here.
Yeah, maybe in the 4th quarter with 11:39 on the clock. 1st and 10 situation, 13 personnel, 1 running back, 3 tight ends. Here's a 23 or 21-yard gain. But again, those linebackers, that 2nd level, and that, again, that personnel grouping. Now you have Bowser on the line of scrimmage as that Sam again. And the Bills are showing that wide zone or mid zone run. I keep saying wide zone, mid zone run. But then look at what those linebackers doing. They're firing downhill. And then now you have that chasm between that, 3rd level and that 2nd level. And we got Josh on the perimeter on a boot. Like, it doesn't happen often. He gets a really nice edge right here in that run pass type option type look. And then you see the space that is vacated there behind that 2nd level. And Josh, drops that arm angle down and hits Coleman for the 21-yard game. Fantastic sequencing and great play call and timing of it at the top of the 4th quarter.
Yeah, this game was close in the 4th, and you're sitting there trying to find a way to really put Miami away or maintain that lead, maintain that edge. And beautiful. We're in lockstep here. You get that similar flow that we just showed on that previous play. Look at Brooks. Look at Walker. Again, similar alignment. There's Poyer down in the box trying to fit that B gap there. Where's Keon Coleman? Right behind him, as Eric just highlighted. Like, this looks from a presentation standpoint and an immediate post-snap reaction almost identical to what we just showed on that previous play. You have Dawson Knox trying to work through a defensive lineman, and this is also why, that zone game pairs so well with play action and boots. The Shanahan tree has lived off of it. It pairs so well because it looks like one another. You can marry the run with the pass so well. And here we go. This looks just like mid-zone. You see the trigger. That entire 2nd level gets sucked up. Poyer, Brooks, and Walker, 2 of those 3 being highlighted there on the screen. Psych, it's a fake. Allen on the boot, like you said, which I wish we would get more of. I'd like more boots, which would be nice. And that 2nd level sucked up lots of space. And good call on the arm angle. That really benefited there. He drops that arm angle, is able to change his slot and kind of almost like bend the bullet like in that movie Wanted with Angelina Jolie, like curves the ball right around that defender in order to get it to Keon Coleman, who for NFL standards is wide the hell open because of how that second level got sucked in, and then the back end going with Quentin Morris, who cleared out some space.
Yeah, they've run this play a few times, haven't had much success in structure. Sometimes Josh gets out of structure a little bit, extends the play a little bit, and hits them. But if they can get that going, if they can get that, first of all, that backside contained player to run down the line of scrimmage, chasing that mid zone run away from him, but also those linebackers getting sucked up. That play and the whole naked bootleg and bootleg angle of this offense has never been unlocked. But now with the Bills under center, using 12 personnel, 12 personnel with an extra offensive lineman, 13 personnel, and here 13 personnel with the extra offensive lineman. I mean, those layers are forcing defenses to do some different things to defend the Bills offense and Josh Allen. And speaking of trying to defend Josh Allen, it's impossible, guys. Fourth quarter, 6:24, 2nd and 2 situation here, 13 personnel, 1 running back, 3 tight ends. This time, Anderson is the extra offensive lineman. This is a 2-yard touchdown, but this is also our easy low and auto sales play of the game. Boom, there it is. So again, we can talk about all the X's and O's, but what it comes down to is Josh Allen, right? He's just unstoppable at times. This play was dead to rights. This is a play they used to run a bunch. It was kind of like a run pass tag. So you got a pulling backside guard here. And then they'd have this run right here, but then they'd also tag Knox. He'd hold and then get to the corner and get out into the flats. Well, that's been shut down in the last year and a half or so. But Josh, you just can't defend him. It's not easy. And somehow he gets a pass off to Q Morris, and they get 6 points on the board. Big touchdown midway through the fourth quarter.
Yeah, this just Josh Allen being a mutant alien unicorn and playing his Sandlot style. Like that's really what it is. Like you're playing in the backyard with your friends and someone pulls a throw like that and you're just kind of just like, oh man, like that sucks. Like if you're playing against that and you see the run fake, you see the eyes highlighted in the cone there from the safety for the Dolphins. So as Allen finishes that run fake to Davis and he starts to get on the move, that safety's triggering right down on him, so he can't get out of that front side. Great screen grab here, or pause, I should say. Knox is muddy and has a defender right on him, and he's sticky. Where is Josh Allen going? He doesn't have anything open right now. He can't run. It's going to be hard to evade. He's got another defender in front of him. Knox is, caught up. There's Quentin Morris highlighted there on the screen. All of a sudden, he sees Allen in trouble, starts to get across a little bit, has a defensive lineman on him, and then just Josh makes a ridiculous throw. Like as he starts to throw it, he gets hit and almost like shot puts the ball out of his hand. Like it doesn't even follow through. It looks like the ball is on his fingertips and he just pushes it forward. And the fact that it lands where it does, like it lands. Yeah, it's perfect. It's away from both defenders. It's up high and away so Morris can go up and get it. It honestly worked out really well as if they planned it. Obviously they didn't. It just ridiculous. That breaks your back and sucks your soul out if you're a defense, because you have this thing dead to rights. Like you said, you have it gummed up. There's really nowhere to go. And then Josh Allen just does some Josh Allen stuff.
It's the protecting the ball discussion that we had at the beginning and how the game is still, slowing down for Josh. Offense is slowing down. He's protecting the ball. I mean, all that is true. It's all valid. But sometimes your superstar franchise QB has to make a play. Sometimes he has to play above the scheme. The Dolphins had this dead to rights. Look at this guy right here. He's pointing out what's about to happen. He's pointing out, hey, they're going to be running a bootleg out here. Watch out. Look, he's like, watch out. I'm containing. And he's a guy that hits Josh. And so this is dead to rights. There's no way this play should be completed. But when you have that superstar QB like Josh Allen, you're able to make plays like that. And that's why this play is our easy loan auto sales, making it look easy, in quotes, making it look easy. Play of the game, touchdown, really of the game. Q Morris, Josh Allen, bravo stuff, man. There's no X's and O's that can really explain this. There's no breakdown that can do this justice. No. This is just Josh Allen playing above the scheme.
And this is in the fourth quarter, it's 2020. And so the fact that he's doing, it's not like, okay, they're up by 20 something points and the game is pretty much over. So you're like, okay, cool. Like, let me try and make something happen. You make something happen. You're playing above the scheme on a low probability completion in a tie game against a team that needs this win, and you pull this out. Just, yeah, the play in and of itself is nuts, but the context and the situation makes it even wilder. And really cool play for our Easy Loan Auto Sales, making it look easy. Play of the game. Sponsored, of course, by our friends at Easy Loan Auto Sales, who, regardless of your credit situation, Easy Loan can help get you behind the wheel and on the road to better credit. All of their vehicles include a 2-year, 24,000-mile warranty, and they have 3 convenient locations in Buffalo, Lockport, and Niagara Falls. They can get you driving today. Go to easyloanauto.com to start your accelerated approval. Thank you very much to our friends at Easy Loan Auto Sales.
No doubt, man. Good stuff from the offense. Again, stuck to the plan, found a few plays and wrinkles that were working, and Brady sequenced, I thought, some of those plays very perfectly, honestly, like the way he waited for those moments to pull out some of those play action passes that were paired with those zone runs. And then sometimes your QB's just got to make a play, and he did. In the second half, the offense in the second half was spectacular. They got to some good plays and concepts, and overall, good stuff from them. And it was needed. Like you said, there were some back-breaking plays made by Josh and some of the Bills skill players that really demoralized that defense, a defense that had a pretty good plan overall for the Bills offense.
Yeah, and a little unfortunate in the first half. You maybe have a touchdown to Coleman on that, run with the pass tag. At worst case scenario, he's getting tackled like inside the 5, and you're probably getting a field goal out of it if you don't convert on the next play. So a little snake bit in that first half for points, but coming out in the second and just continuing to pepper underneath and, low against this Dolphins defense and working the run and layer and sequence. A really nice, play call job and layering and sequencing job from Brady. Good job on Allen in terms of decision making and timing and process and sound process, leading to good results, but sound process in general. The run game working. Really nice to see the Bills offense continue to have another strong performance like they did the week prior against the Seattle Seahawks on the road. Now, Eric, we flip to the other side of the ball to talk about the Bills defense, who, from a score perspective and some, times in this game really felt like they were fighting for their lives a little bit against the Dolphins, getting gashed a little bit, getting knocked off the ball. And, I think too, especially from a fan perspective, I think just because the Bills have had this success against Miami, I think people forget how good of a designer and play caller McDaniel is, and then how good that run game is. And when he commits to it and game script doesn't force them out of it, it's a problem for most teams, but especially with how the Bills are designed schematically and how the Dolphins offense can attack that. We saw it with Baltimore. We saw it with the Green Bay offense a couple years ago. LaFleur obviously comes from a similar tree. These teams that can weaponize motion, and especially McDaniel, who wields it in different ways creatively, combined with their personnel and the speed, really kind of almost like a perfect storm to attack this Bills defense. And they found success, but the Bills were able to mitigate some things like we're going to show here.
Yeah, their run game is like poetry in motion, kind of like the Niners. It just at times once it gets rolling, it's so pretty to watch. And I love Bobby Babbitt's presser early in the week and how he talked about, the staff and the players, they know how they want to defend the Dolphins. Again, too high safety looks, minimizing those explosive plays. That's kind of nothing new. This staff and these players know that going into this game. So when they stick to that and they don't load the box and you're playing with light boxes, which they did a bunch, I'm talking like 16 carries for 108 yards versus 6-man boxes. It comes down to personnel at that point. They stuck to it and they said, no, you guys need to have better reads. You need to diagnose better. You need to read your keys. And so we're going to show you what Bobby Babbage meant by it came down to fundamentals. It came down to things like reading keys. And so obviously when you watch the game back, try watching it, not in, from beginning to end, watch specific buckets. Okay. Let's watch all the gap runs. Let's watch all the zone runs. Let's watch all the screens, because you'll start to see the game plan unfold from an offense and defensive perspective. So this is what Babbage means by reading the keys. Second quarter, 6:01, a 2nd-and-1 situation. They're running a power run. So they have a backside guard pulling. And I want you to watch the 3 technique here, Austin Johnson. All right. And watch how he doesn't read his keys properly. And when that doesn't happen, when he doesn't recognize a power run or a gap run, you get washed. And that's how the Bills surrender 5 yards on this play. So watch the guard and tackle. You see the guard doesn't even have to double team him because of how upfield that D tackle Johnson is. So that right tackle just washes him down. And how does that affect everyone else? Anthony, we know 111th, man. Gap integrity is everything. Now look at that gap. Now look at that gap. Luckily, Bernard is able to beat that pulling guard, and Anku is able to disengage and get get that tackle there as well. And so reading keys is super important. And when D linemen are reading keys, Anthony, they're reading the footwork. Usually it's, you see them looking down at the footwork, where they step, whether it's this way versus that way, it can really uncover what type of block coming. If this guy, all of a sudden just goes here, sometimes you're going to get that little full block, right? There's different footwork that goes with blocking. Sometimes if he's stepping here and he's stepping here, well, there's your double team. So reading keys usually for D lineman starts up front with the footwork of the offensive lineman, with, some of the keys and takeaways, like, okay, how wide is that split? All these little things play a factor into defending the run and reading blocks.
I think it's funny too with this one, when we talk about reading the keys and the lack of it from Austin Johnson, but then Bernard and even Dorian to a degree kind of reading the key of the pulling guard and going with it and being able to try and fit that gap that gets, pretty much opened up because Austin Johnson gets completely washed. And it's so important in this defense, like you said, when they are not able to have numbers in the box and when they don't have a hat for a hat or a body for every gap from a numbers perspective, you have to then win with your personnel, and you need those guys to read their keys. You need them to be able to adjust on the fly. And Babich, I talked about it as well, guys who have their primary gap, but then are able to fall back into the secondary gap. We've talked about gap and a half stuff for a bit on this show throughout the years. It's so important for those guys to be able to win or engage in that way because you don't have the numbers advantage. And, here we go in another example with a lighter box. Plus, when the Bills are going light box, you're playing nickel, so you're lighter from a heavier personnel perspective as well. So you need those guys up front and even at the second level to read their keys, execute, and win one-on-one.
Right. And here's one where, Oliver is at the 3 tech and just, we're in the third quarter now. This is still a 5-yard gain on 1st and 10. So the Bills had their struggles on early downs, but just watch now how Oliver plays it here. And you can see his helmet. You can tell he's surveying both the tackle and the guard here, looking to both sides again, trying to recognize and diagnose what block's about to hit him. And I'm sure that they discussed it. Hey, that guard is not even doing a double team block on the 3 technique in these power runs. He's just climbing. So what does Oliver do? He plays into that guard, stands him up, plays into him so that he can't climb to Bernard. And so that kind of throws off the rhythm and timing of this play, but it also keeps Bernard free to come down and make the tackle on the running back. So it's a little different. It's played a little differently by Oliver than Johnson on the last play, but you can see how that affects the linebacker level and keeping that linebacker level free or that nickel free when we're talking Taron Johnson.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, so you still get the 5-yard gain. Wright's able to hit it quick, but Oliver handles this so much better. And essentially, it takes 2 blockers out for just one Ed Oliver because you have Taron Armstead, number 72 there. He's still trying to wash down Ed Oliver, and Jones's man is Bernard. So Jones is trying to climb to the second level, like you said. But because of Oliver attacking Jones on the snap, look how displaced Jones is. He's far
I'm not going to get over there.
Yeah, he literally looks at him like, crap. Yeah, I can't do that. Hey, let me just go to the right and kind of see what happens. And now you have a hole and a gap, but you've got a body right in there to make a play. And that body is Terrell Bernard, who comes up, makes a good form tackle, brings right down. But it's a great example. Like that pre-snap highlight is so perfect. You can literally see Ed Oliver looking right at the feet. He is looking at it. He is reading it. It's not just, okay, let's, snap the ball and kind of see what happens. So maybe, like you said, a halftime adjustment, they're playing for it a little bit more, and we get that same concept again, but they handle it so much better in that third quarter.
So now we fast forward a little more, and now we are on to the fourth quarter, 4:47 left in the game. 1st and 10 situation, same power run. This time it's only a 3-yard game, but watch how Oliver muddies this play up even more so than the last. He essentially just says, you know what? You guys are going to have to both, double team on this like a traditional power run would happen. But he muddies this up, and it's team defense at this point. Watch Daquan Jones win the half man with the arm over to the left side of the screen, and watch Epinesa as that backside guard is pulling to kick him out. He swims Eichenberg. It's team defense. It's recognizing the blocking, recognizing what's happening in front of you and going and making play. And that's how Bernard is able to, limit this play to a 3-yard gain. Everybody recognizing and diagnosing the run concept, the run blocking, playing downhill, and making a stop for only a 3-yard gain.
Yeah, this one, again, pre-snap from Ed, you see him looking down at the feet, kind of waiting there. So look where his head is. It's similar to the other angle we just showed. You're just not seeing him from the front. You're seeing him from the back this time. And I really like the job he does against this double team. Doesn't get displaced, holds his ground, low man wins, wide base. It doesn't have to be the prettiest. We say this all the time on the show. Just muddy it up. Like you said, gum up the works, make it not clean for the offense. That's exactly what happens. Jones struggles a little bit to get to the second level. Armstead is on Oliver, but that hole is closed now because Oliver created some chaos and there's nowhere to go. And then look at all the arrows flowing to the ball. Daquan has beaten the center. Yes, so you get population of the ball, like you always say. Daquan beats the center. Epinesa just leaves Eichenberg on the ground because he lays him and beats him there. And then Bernard Fitz get a nice physical finish. Groot is coming from the side and popping right. That's a good individual adjustment. And again, you need that from your defensive line, especially when you're playing these two high structures, which the Bills want to do. It might suck for people to hear, but like, you're cool giving up 6 and 7 yards a carry to Miami because you'd rather do that than give up a 35-yard completion to Tyreek Hill or a 70-yard touchdown. Like, you need to keep over the top in these games, which the Bills did. 76.7% split safety rate in this game. So a lot of two high structures. It was nice to see the Bills adjust at some point individually in that second half and be able to kind of mitigate the bleeding at times.
Right. And you heard Babbage talk about in that presser about fundamentals. And so I want to talk about some of the motions and shifts that, McDaniel used to get the angles, to get the leverage in the run game. So we're going to start in the first quarter, 13-25, first and 10 situation, 21 personnel. No surprise there with Alec Ingold. He's off to the left side. Keep an eye on the structure. It's a 2-high safety structure post snap. They short motion Ingold inside, and they're going to get him on an ISO lead on the nickel. But also watch Eichenberg, the right guard. You see him feed Daquan Jones over to the center, and he does a really good job of doing that, then climbing to the next level. And so now, boom, you have a hat on a hat play side. Rousseau is kicked out. Ingold is on Johnson. Eichenberg on Bernard. You see the leverage that the center got thanks to the feed block, and you get an easy 7-yard gain. Now there's an opportunity for Rousseau and Jones to squeeze this. They want to retrace over the top, and you heard Babbage talk about that. You hear that kind of term of retracing over the top on crack toss runs when those guys get, crack backed on the line of scrimmage, working back over the top to widen the play. You want to see Jones and Rousseau do a good job of squeezing this gap because there's a hat on a hat here, but they're not able to. And then Rousseau is not able to make the tackle, which is usually, it's a big surprise for him. Usually he wraps those guys up, no problem, but you get 7 yards on that play, thanks to the short motion, thanks to the scheme and the fundamentals of the Dolphins and lack thereof of the Bills when you're talking, not squeezing back to kind of limit the hole there by the running back.
Yeah, and another good example of Miami using motion, so creative with it, and a lot of teams are getting that way now with the motion. It's not just like motion across the formation. There's different speeds and tempos. There's timing to it, return motions and short motions and leads and tying into the motion and all of those pieces. And the Bills just get the Dolphins, I should say, just get a body on a body, which means the Bills don't have a body for every gap. And if you're not able to squeeze that at the front, like they weren't on this play, they are later, which is nice to see from them. But then you're just sitting at a numbers game with the advantage being the offensive side because you have a hat on the hat, like you said. Really nice feed block from Eichenberg. You can just see how that little push creates that leverage and is the reason that Daquan Jones is not able to get over the top. He sees it. He still tries to work a little bit, but isn't able to fully get there. And great call too on Rousseau. We usually see him like be able to squeeze and use that, those tree trunk arms to get across gaps and make plays. And, little contact pieces and things like this of just getting an arm or a shoulder on a guy and not being able to bring him down was part of the reason why the Dolphins had 4.31 yards after contact per rush in this game, which was the highest in week 9.
Right. And so we fast forward a little bit. So there are two different things that can happen. You can change a personnel, which you see here. You have a different nose tackle in the game here in Anku, or you could change the structure. We're going to show you two different ways the Bills did that in this game. So same exact play, slightly different presentation, but there's no gain on this play later in the first quarter. And we're going to show you why. So here comes Ingold across the formation. You look at Rousseau. As soon as that motion happens, he tightens his split. And then look at the movement by Dorian Williams and watch how all of that movement doesn't allow Eichenberg to feed Anku to the center. Anku does a great job of fighting force with force there, so he's not getting fed over to the center. And more importantly, he and Rousseau are squeezing that gap. And all that movement prior to the snap screwed up the blockers. Eichenberg and Ingold, they don't know whether to go get Williams, get Bernard. They screw that up. But then look at the gap. It's so much smaller here, and they're able to get population to the ball on the very same play, thanks to fundamentals, thanks to some slight change in personnel, but recognition that this play was coming.
Yeah, and on the previous one, when Daquan and Rousseau are trying to squeeze, the ball is already in Achan's hand, and there's a hat on a hat. Now Rousseau and Anku are trying to squeeze, but there's two bodies in the hole because they haven't been able to climb as cleanly through, as you pointed out. And now once Jalen Wright gets that football, the squeeze is already happening. You're getting population in the football, like you said. Greg Rousseau sets a hard edge, which is really nice. Then you've got Dorian and Bernard inside, like you said. You've got Anku working across the face of the center, not allowing himself to get reached. And then a good job from Ed on the backside. He shoots on Taron Armstead, does not let himself get washed down. He's ripping and fighting through right there. So you get that population of the football. And again, these are the type of, you can have those adjustments. It could be, you scout and you see something, you might have to change the front structure, or you get a different body in there. You get a little bit execution. You see Rousseau shaking that finger. They kind of knew what was up there. They adjusted. Really nice to see. And again, another shout out for Ilianku, kind of operating in that niche of just being a pain in the ass in the middle of the defensive line.
Right. And so this is something the Bills don't do a lot of. We talked about personnel. Yeah, you could do personnel changes. You could put Anku in there. You can put a different defender in there. But we see both here. We see slight personnel change and across the line, but also a structure change. Usually the Bills open up with their 3 technique. Here's your 3 technique, usually outside shoulder of the guard. Usually he's to the strength of the formation. So normally over here on this play, he's to the open side. So this is considered an under front. The nose tackle is to the close tight end side here. And so this is a slight structure change, something the Bills don't do a lot of. We see this in the second quarter, 2nd and 2 situation, same play, same personnel, and watch what happens on this play. It's it's a nice adjustment to this front. And honestly, when you look at what this does, it keeps, as that motion happens, you see Cam Lewis become one of the defenders at that second level. That 3 technique can kind of protect him in many ways. And so now look at this. Now look how much tighter this is. Look at the edge set by Epinesa. Fantastic job by him at setting that edge and using his hand placement to disengage to make this tackle. But again, look at Austin Johnson, the 3 technique. And now you have Ingold coming in for Cam Lewis. And normally that would scare you. But because of all the population and the gap integrity here, look at all the guys to the ball. Look at the block destruction, and the technique and fundamentals were on point. And that's why this play was shut down.
Yeah, this was nice. You also have, Rapp walk down into the box pre-snap as well. So you're not living purely in the too high structure, but that second level, they react to the motion as they do. Like you said, it's just good squeezing on the front side from that triangle of Cam Lewis, AJ Epinesa, and Austin Johnson. These reps also give me a little, there's some hope to kind of see Austin Johnson if he can be more in like the 3 tech role where he's played more and, or I'm sorry, like kind of adjusting to that 3 tech spot where he hasn't played more. He's been more like that 1 tech nose, like we talked about in his career, especially with the Giants, but him being able to work through the guard there, squeeze.
He's good down the line of scrimmage.
Yes.
Like versus zone runs, like some of the wide zone runs and pitches, I thought he did a great job of, scraping down the line of scrimmage, but on some of those gap runs, the trap runs where he's getting upfield, and they're kicking him out, and he's not reading that stuff. That's where he gets in trouble a little bit.
Yes. He had multiple reps in this game where he did a good job getting down the line or crossing the face of linemen, not allowing himself to get reached. And he's either making a play on the guy or forcing, a track change for the running back. And this one's nice. He's working through. He's got his eyes on the ball. He's able to kind of maintain. And then you get the help from Epinesa. You get everybody doing their 111th on that front side, the coordinated dance that is, team run defense. Again, this front change, I know for a lot of people are probably like, so what? They changed the front. That's a huge deal. They
That's
never
big.
do under fronts. Like them doing anything other than like a 4-3 over is shocking. So anytime they
And
do
not
like an
blitzing, and not blitzing. That's the
correct.
thing. They'll do under fronts if they're sending a safety or a
Yeah.
linebacker off that edge.
Yeah, like a 5. Yeah, if they're trying to get creative with it. So anytime we see an under or like a tight or a bear or a cub front, like I feel like we have to call it out because it's like
Yes.
a huge flag to like call it and flag it.
Right. And so again, they made some changes by signing Jefferson and Jordan Phillips. We saw some personnel and structure changes there. So it begs the question, like, what can be done when teams are able to run the ball? So these are some of the things that the staff has at their disposal. And I want to show you a clip of Daquan Jones relative to Eli Anku, who again we like what Anku brings from a run defense standpoint, especially if we're talking against teams like the Ravens, who have
Yep.
Ricard and Ingold for the Dolphins. When they want to go 21, when they want to go heavy personnel, bring that big boy up, call him up and play nose tackle with him. Because right now, Daquan has had his struggles. So we're going to look at this play in the second quarter, 10:59 on the clock, 2nd and 10 situation. Again, 21 personnel, 2 high safety structure. It's a wind back play. Look at the triple team initially on Daquan Jones and how that creates the displacement. So center hits him, guard hits him, tackle comes and hits him, and they drive him back right into the lap of Bernard. Now you're getting Ingold on the nickel on the wind back. Again, this is essentially like a lead play, kind of like you saw a couple plays ago. Ingold on the nickel. You get really nice, entry for the running back right there. Rousseau only gets his arm on him, and you get a 16-yard gain against Daquan Jones and the interior defensive line of the Bills.
I love these wind back plays from teams in general. Atlanta did it a bunch last year. So it's, unfortunate to see the Dolphins use it against the Bills, but I love these plays just of how you can attack a front. This one made me sad. It's funny. I hadn't finished getting through the film yesterday and you quote tweeted my Ilianku tweet with this play. And I was like, oh man, like this is sad to see this, like him kind of to see Daquan get blown up like this by this triple team. Like you said, that displacement is crazy. Austin Jackson is able to climb effectively to Bernard. Watch Jackson 73, the right tackle, as he gets to that second level to Bernard. Watch him just stick his right arm and like clotheslines the hell out of him, traps him inside. You've got that flow from the second level because they're reading the initial track of Ingold and Mostert. They get caught from an angle perspective on that wind back run. So you've got angles working against you. You've got displacement working against you because of the triple team against Daquan Jones. And that allows a nice alley, a nice seam, crease, however you want to verbalize it, for Mostert to really get downhill immediately, put his foot into the ground and get to the second and then third level. But Eric, this one is really nice in juxtaposition with the next play that we're going to show in terms of how Ilianku plays it and how it turns differently for the Dolphins and Bills.
Yeah, third quarter, 4:51. The Dolphins are in the red zone, 1st and 10 situation. 21 personnel. Now, this is a little different. They have Hamlin in the box now, so they have numbers in the box. But here's Anku again. Same exact play. They're running to the other side, but same exact play and setup. Watch how they try to get a triple team on Anku. But again, I imagine this is talked about on the sideline after Daquan it gets lit up, with the Dolphins backed up, and that's important. The Bills had him backed up there, but watch how Anku, he recognizes that second, that guard coming in, whereas Daquan didn't. He recognizes that, and then he's like, all right, I'm going to throw you and split that triple team all together, and he is a man-child on this play. Yeah. He's a man-child on this play. He just throws it, the guard away, disposes of him, then goes Incredible Hulk, also on the running back, throws him out the club. This was hilarious. When you watch this, I don't know about you, but I was rolling when he did this. He pretty much blew up this play all by himself, but you can see the differences in the recognition, in the physicality and size between the two players. Obviously, Daquan's our boy, but you can see how Anku is a little bit different when we're talking that strength at his age and size.
Yeah, and you can see it with his eyes and where his head goes immediately on the snap, like you said. So this ball is snapped. He's looking at the center right now, but his eyes and his head immediately go to that left guard. Yep. So he sees it. And then because he plays with a good base and he's low and he's big and heavy, they don't displace him. And then, so Armstead's trying to wash him. You're trying to get some climbs. And he just goes like Godzilla versus King Kong type of deal, and just look at the left guard get thrown off balance. He chucks him out of the way, and then to have the wherewithal to chuck and then get back in terms of getting your eyes on the ball and making a play on the ball carrier. So deconstructing that block, you're gumming up the works, you're muddying things, and then you're also making a play on the ball for the stop. This is one of the really encouraging things about Ilianku and why he's in that conversation, I think, for a lot of fans. But, despite having, minimal pass rush pop or ability, the ability to provide that kind of value in this front, in this defense, keeping second level defenders clean, but also just causing chaos. This angle too,
This angle's crazy.
Yeah, this angle is like nuts. You really get to see him kind of just, that bend and recoil that he kind of has where he resets himself a little bit right here.
Yeah.
He comes off, he anchors down, and then once that left foot touches the ground, that's when he chucks the guard and splits. Like, that's really impressive, and it's even better from a perspective standpoint in juxtaposing it with the previous play and how one guy can really make a difference, along with having, a safety in the box from a numbers perspective as well.
Yeah, final two plays, we always get asked like, hey, when the opposing team is in running the ball down the throats of the Bills defense, why don't they ever go to base defense? Well, we're going to show you why. First quarter here, 10:20 on the clock, first and 10 situation. Here's a 12-yard gain, but look how McDaniel and the Dolphins use motion to get numbers at the point of attack. This little motion by the wide receiver allows the tackle and the tight end to double team and create a new edge on Smoot. The wide receiver out wide cracks on Dorian Williams, and he's oblivious to that happening. And then you just get numbers at the point of attack. That other wide receiver came in motion, kicked out Douglas, and you get a 12-yard gain. And it's one of those plays where, like, okay, they're getting on the perimeter. And usually the Bills are a really good edge setting team, but when you get numbers and you're able to, get that double team at the point of attack between the tight end and the left tackle, it's difficult. It's difficult to set an edge here. And then you get, again, Dorian kind of oblivious that without, having his head on a swivel, and you get Mostert on the edge and you get a really big gain off this toss play.
Yeah, Smoot has been susceptible to giving up the edge at times this year, even going back to the preseason. And then you highlighted too with Dorian, not to pick on him, but like you said, just oblivious. And we've shown plays. We showed Cole Bishop doing it. We showed Taron Johnson doing it last week, like coming down and being aware of that crack, taking on that block, but still leveraging your gap and making the play. Dorian just gets a little bit into the backfield and into that eye candy a little too much, is oblivious to that crack from the wide receiver. And that's just a beautiful seal from that front side with, Taron, Armstead, and the tight end taking care of Smoot, and then Waddle. I think also let's shout that out, like, for as much as they are speedy and athletic and all this stuff, like the Dolphins wide receivers and even their running backs when they're out there, like they block, like Achane, Mostert, like Waddle, the tight ends, like they get after it a bit. You have to in this offense. And this front side is just sealed, and it allows Mostert to get to the perimeter because of numbers, population of the ball from an offensive perspective. But now, Eric, we flip it to the other side. And instead of this, being run to Dorian's side, it's run to Taron Johnson's side, and he makes a spectacular play.
Yeah, and let me preface this by, well, initially you see Johnson to the top of the screen. He's to the passing strength to the top. Well, when Ingold was when that 21 personnel, usually Johnson was to his side. So Ingold started out here and he came in to this eye set. So now Johnson's at the point of attack in the third quarter. Top of the second half, same play, but watch Ingold short motions and gets outside. And this is something kind of like the last play. They got an extra guy on the edge setter, Rousseau here. So now you have a tight end getting hand leverage on Rousseau. Now you have Ingold kind of help him, kick him out so they can get up inside. Jackson on Bernard. And so now Taron Johnson is at the point of attack this time. So there's Ingold kicking Rousseau out. Then he's going to go get Taron Johnson. And Johnson is able to disengage from Ingold, but he remains in the play, waits for that exact moment, and then Peanut punches the ball out. The game-changing play by Taron Johnson. This is why you don't take him off the field. There are times where the Dolphins were running right at Johnson, and they were getting really good gains. But then there are times in the game that Taron's going to adjust, or the defense is going to adjust, and he's going to make an impact play. This is why the Bills struggle to take him off the field, regardless of what's happening in the run game.
Yeah, when this defense is healthy, you've got two all-pro players in Matt Milano and Taron Johnson. And Taron, I forget how many times we've said it in terms of being like the most underrated or most important player on this defense. This is a great play. Him, cutting off that outside, forcing the ball to go back into where his help is and where the pursuit is coming from. So he sees it. He stays on top. He's not going to allow himself to get sucked in or like logged and allow Mostert to get up the sideline. His head is focused on Mostert, gets his hands on Ingold, stays clean, and then Mostert has no idea that he's coming, which also helps. But just the awareness, like to play it, from a fit perspective initially and soundly to, you're going to give up a chunk here because of how it was, blocked initially with the numbers. But okay, let's force this back inside. I know I've got pursuit coming from the defensive line, from Bernard, from Dorian, and Ingold's a good blocker. So for him to stay free and maintain leverage here, and then just comes away clean and bang. That is precise. That is a beautiful peanut punch right on the ball. That's heady. That's good awareness. And it's 10-6 at this point. And Miami's driving. They got the ball to start this second half. They are running it down the Bills' throat. They even have another successful run here. And you change all of that in the blink of an eye. Just a huge play from arguably, if not the best player on this Bills defense, who continues to show up in a variety of forms week in and week out. And like you said, like there will be times where he's going to got in the run game because of size and frame. And then there's other plays like that, or even one like Austin Jackson tries to climb to him and he quickly defeats the block and gets into the hole and makes the tackle. Just what he's able to do and how important his skill set and mindset and mentality and intelligence is to this defense. It goes a long way. And like you said, that play changed the entirety of the game and started to really shape things in the Bills' favor from then on out.
Yeah, it's difficult to take him off the field. He just,
Man.
with the injuries that the Bills have had on defense, whether Bernard in and out, obviously Milano being out, some in the secondary, like it's difficult to take Taron off the field when he's healthy, because sooner or later he's going to make a play like that. Sooner or later he's going to make a Havoc type play where he's creating a tackle for loss or creating a turnover or a big hit to create the emotion on the defensive side of the ball. That's what Poyer used to bring to the Bills defense, that emotion, that tone setter, those big momentum type plays. And now Taron has also in his own right been that kind of guy. And I think he's just stepping up even more. And that play was it was so big for this game. It really was the turning point of this game against the Miami Dolphins on Sunday.
Absolutely. And again, kudos to Miami in that game for having a scheme and game plan and structure that works well in attacking this Bills defense. And when that happens, you need to have some answers like we showed. Sometimes it's individual players. Sometimes it's, structure or alignment things. Or sometimes it's just your best dudes going out and making a play. And that's what that was there. Like that's a win for Miami. Like you feel like if you're watching that initially, you're like, wow, this
7
is
yards.
blocked good. Yep, Mostert's into space. And then you're like, oh no. And that it just changes at the drop of a hat. That is a huge, huge play in that game. Like we said, arguably the biggest in terms of what it led to after that, made by one of your best players, your biggest contributors. So great job from Taron Johnson there. Eric, anything for you or from you before we wrap up here?
No, I hope that, kind of clear things up. If you're more interested in some of the run concepts that Dolphins did get onto the Bills defense, I did a breakdown on Monday, more in depth on that. But I wanted to show what the coaching staff was talking about when they're talking about fundamentals and reading keys and what defensive linemen are looking at and what it means when they are slow to read their keys or they're slow on their fundamentals, and how important, again, the 1/11th mentality is, where, that group of guys, 4 or 5 when we're talking run game, right in those gaps, those, B and C gaps, how important each of those guys are when it comes to their technique, their fundamentals, and their overall assignments.
And if you folks want some more on that as well, we've had Daquan Jones in the filming with us multiple times and Greg Rousseau. And those two dudes are extremely smart. And they will, in all 3 of those episodes, they talk about, we're setting things up and they're talking about, okay, like this lineman's stance to me is indicating this. And I knew that this team likes to do this. So on the snap, I'm looking here. I'm trying to do this with my hand because I'm trying to do this. It really kind of puts the science of block deconstruction and key reading into perspective for you folks. So, if we didn't do enough justice for you on that, go check out that from the players themselves. Really fun episodes that we enjoyed, and they kind of add a little more in terms of what they're, if you want to hear it from their mouth directly, because you might not believe us, that's exactly what they get into. So, some more food for thought if that's what you folks want. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Cover One Film Room. Again, another victory for the Buffalo Bills, and now they face the legendary Joe Flacco and the Colts this week, and we will have you covered here in the Cover One Film Room next Wednesday, breaking down anything and everything from that game that we think you folks need to know and understand. But that'll do it for us here in this episode of the Film Room. If you have not already, please drop a like on this video here on YouTube. Likes are the lifeblood of these streams and the algorithm. They go a very long way to helping us track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. Turn on notifications for the Cover One Film Room playlist. Subscribe to the Cover One channel as a whole, where we have you covered pretty much every single day of the week with various levels of Buffalo Bills coverage. If you're listening to the show on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, that's very much appreciated as well. Please rate and review and subscribe to the Cover One Film Room and to the other shows on the brand as well for whatever podcasting app or platform you are listening to this show on. Tell your family and friends and loved ones about the brand and the show and the channel. Word of mouth is how Cover One got started, and it is a significant part of how we continue to grow and find more success. So that's greatly appreciated from you folks as well. We hope you enjoyed this episode, however you are watching or listening. We hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Be kind to one another. Take care of one another. Thank you very much to our partners at Easy Loan, and thank you very much to our friends at BetUS, who, again, have you covered for anything and everything for your betting needs. Godspeed. We'll see you next week. And as always, go Bills.